Hey everyone. First up, before the episode starts, I just want to say that the response to the first video was insane. I was not expecting this amount of growth, so a sincere, honest thank you from the bottom of my heart to everybody. Alright, so like I said, today's video is a short one about the Gothic peoples. We're going to go through some important history and culture and their role in the fall of the Western Roman Empire. So to start, there were many Germanic peoples living around southern Scandinavia and Central and Eastern Europe in the early centuries CE. In fact, an early people referred to as Guttones are documented living in modern-day Poland in the 100s CE. Later, we know for sure that cultures which would become known as Goths were moving southwards in the 200s. They spoke languages in the East Germanic language family, and in the late 3rd century they were converted from pagan Germanic religions to a Christianity called Arianism. Ulfilas, a Goth whose parents were Greek, was instrumental in their religious conversion. He translated at least some of the Bible into a Gothic language. Surviving copies and versions of this Gothic Bible are a basis for understanding their alphabet and their now dead languages. He was actually an Orthodox bishop who was sent back to the Goths to do missionary work to convert them, only later becoming an Arian. He was kicked out by a high-ranking Goth and went north with a few followers. He started to translate the Bible in the Balkans. He had to create his own alphabet since his language didn't have one. The politics surrounding the Gothic involvement in Western Rome's fall are simply too complicated to be explained adequately in this video. I'll only give an overview, and I suggest you look into this topic yourself because it really is fascinating. I'm going to oversimplify some earlier events to provide basic context for the focus of this section. So, if you know anything about this, and if you're probably more knowledgeable than me about this, so if you are, tell everybody else in the comments because this is really an interesting topic. From the early 3rd century, we have Roman records detailing raids and sackings that can be reasonably attributed to Gothic peoples. Goths continued ransacking the empire, capturing cities, even killing an emperor in battle in 251. The Goths fought on horseback and were apparently excellent archers, but they could also accomplish raids above coasts by way of seafaring. This way, the Goths took over lots of Asia Minor and eventually completely controlled Crimea. They also later sacked cities in much of southern Greece, including what would later be the capital of Rome, Byzantium. Just before the 270s, Emperor Claudius drove barbarians out of the Balkans. However, he had more problems to deal with. A fleet made up of all kinds of Germanic barbarian tribes was amassed, led by a popular Gothic raid leader. Ancient historians number them in the thousands, but that's probably not true. The Goths may have damaged the Temple of Artemis, one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world. It was a harrowing campaign, in which the Goths suffered many losses at the hands of disease, bad waters, and possibly Roman naval might. They retreated to the Balkans and faced fierce opposition at the Italian border. The Romans feigned retreat, then quickly ambushed the Goths and killed 50,000 of them under the leadership of future Emperor Aurelian. He ended up defeating and driving off Goths during his own reign, only losing small amounts of territory to a king called Cannabades. I don't know, Cannabades? Later on, Germanic barbarians called Gepids tried to defeat a Gothic king known as Ostrogotha, but lost. In the 300s, the 2 major Gothic groups went under cultural Latinization. They traded with Rome and even served in its army. This close contact led to cultural exchange between the groups, especially militarily and politically. A Goth called Mardonian even tutored Emperor Julian. I think he was also an advisor to Julian. It even became somewhat fashionable in the Eastern Empire to wear animal skins like the Goths. Independent Western Gothic kingdoms were invaded by Huns as they made their way into the empire. There's even a Scandinavian saga about it. Anyway, this led to a lot of refugee immigration, but the Roman government mistreated its new Gothic residents, making it so that they had to sell their children. These conditions sparked a huge rebellion which lasted through the reigns of multiple emperors. A Goth friend of Emperor Theodosius, named Athanaric, negotiated surrender, subjecting the Gothic people, called Thervingi, into the practice of Fodarti. Fodarati? I don't know. These Roman words are hard to pronounce. Then, the Western Goths, or Visigoths, and the Eastern Goths, or Ostrogoths, came into play. These are going to be the most important groups from here on. There is so much history about these people, so I'll try not to bore you. But please, research this on your own and talk about it in the comments, it's fascinating. Tensions ran high between Visigoths in the Balkans and other non-Gothic Romans, which the imperial government was aware of. They sided with Theodosius in a civil war, but after he died, the Visigoths went back to raiding. King Alaric tried invading Italy, which angered the government and resulted in the ordered deaths of thousands of Goths, including those in the army. Alaric then successfully invaded Italy in order to create political pressure for permission to once again peacefully coexist with the empire by freeing slaves and settling in Roman land. Just before he died, he actually sacked Rome with minimal destruction and casualties. The Visigoths settled in Gaul and Iberia for a while and continued hostilities with their empire. Things eventually cooled down, and they allied with the empire a few times and then established an independent kingdom. Their kingdom was conquered, and they were progressively assimilated into Hispano-Roman culture, and are part of the reason why Spanish nobles have been Germanic or had Germanic names for so long. Ostrogoths were heavily affected by the Hunnic invasion, either being Hunnic subjects or fleeing into positions as Roman soldiers. They sometimes fought with the Huns and sometimes rebelled against Rome. Now, we're going to talk about the big ones, Odoacer and Theodoric. Odoacer was a Germanic leader who led a joint barbarian attack that deposed the child emperor Romulus and eventually killed the other legitimate claimant to the Western Roman Empire. He sort of acted like Romulus Augustulus' successor, like he had just taken power like any emperor would. However, his reach was small, and he was really a king of Italy who only treated himself like a client of the Byzantines out of fear of invasion. He even tried to help overthrow Emperor Zeno, but Zeno fought back and sent people to chip away at his territory. In the end, he decided that to kill two birds with one stone, he'd send the Ostrogoth Theodoric away from his empire to be the new king of Italy. And around 490, he had taken it over and had a meal with Odoacer to negotiate surrender. However, and here's a quick content warning for gore, he literally got up from the table and cut Odoacer in half. Vertically. Yeah, so Theodoric established a Gothic kingdom in Italy. Goths ruled over an unarmed majority of Romans, and eventually this place was taken over by the Lombards, but that's for another day. Also, look at this. It's a fibula brooch, carved to look like an eagle, which is common as an archaeological find when it comes to Goths. Another fun fact is that during the Neoclassical period, when Europeans venerated the antiquity that ended with the Gothic Italian kingdom, we got the term Gothic to describe the architecture that rose out of the Middle Ages brought upon by the coming of the Goths. When we started to see literature taking place in these old dark castles that the neoclassicists hated, it was called Gothic literature, and we started using Gothic to just mean dark, macabre, or ornate. The rest is history. Anyway, the Germanic minority explains in part why Northern Italians have lighter skin and hair than Southern Italians. This video was a lot of fun to research. Leave some comments below because I'd love to answer your history questions. Also, I'm linking to a video by YouTuber Sean that will serve as a nice complement to this one. See ya! Odoacer? I hardly know her.